This is the Angry GM, and this is the Angry GM's mostly monthly live chat for the month of May in the year of 2026. And you may be hearing this for the first time ever, or hearing one of these for the first time ever, because I'm doing something a little different with this month's mostly monthly live chat, and that is I am distributing it freely to everyone in my audience. So you may be listening to this even if you do not support me or follow me on Patreon. There is stuff that I want to get out to the world in this. So, and just for those people who are listening to this who don't normally hear these, every month, most months, which is why it's called mostly monthly, mostly every month, in my Discord channel for supporters who have access to the Discord on Patreon and Subscribestar, I host a live chat where I talk for about an hour about various topics, news about the site, and then I answer some questions, and we do some stuff, and maybe I'll dive into a gaming topic or whatever. And then I put forth the recording for those, again, who support me on Patreon and Subscribestar. But like I said, this one is going out to everyone. And that is because I do want to talk a little bit about what's been going on the site and in the community and what is going to be happening in in June. My vision for June. But before I do that, because I've put out a couple of messages recently, with things being rescheduled and things being changed, I have gotten some questions about Biscuit, who is my cat. And I have also gotten a few very worried questions about me because of various things and people who know various things. So first, let me just reassure everybody, Biscuit is absolutely fine. She has some sort of skin irritation going on that is causing her to overgroom and chew up her tummy a little bit. And so she had to spend some time in a soft, light recovery collar, and so that she couldn't keep chewing. And we're testing different treatments now to see what might be causing the issues. So she is fine. She's just very uncomfortable. I have her out of the collar now, but she has gone back to over grooming a bit. So we might have to continue to experiment with that. But she is fine. Thank you, everyone, for the concerns. I know that my community treats her like kind of a mascot, and that's because I share a lot of pictures of her, because she really is a beautiful kitty. She's just a pain in the ass if you have to live with her, and she costs me a fortune, and she's pointedly ignoring me right now. She's staring out the window, pretending she can't hear what I'm saying. As for me, I have been going through yet another very difficult mental health time. And in the past, I have talked about these things because every time I talk about them, I get responses from people in my community who are similarly struggling with their mental health or with other issues in general, who thank me for being open about it so that they don't feel as alone, because one of the things that mental health does is it causes you to suffer in silence alone. And when we do that, when we keep our problems to ourselves and we don't talk about the fact that we're struggling, then we look around and nobody's talking about it, and we think we're the only ones, or that there's something specifically wrong with us, right? Like, you look around and everybody seems to be just soldiering through life, and you're feeling broken inside. Forgive me for using that word, but that's how it feels. You feel broken inside, and you're wondering, why am I the only one that life is chewing up? So you are not. And some people are going through very, very difficult struggles right now and have reached out to me, where they are struggling to even do basic normal things that some people take for granted, like struggling to just get out of bed at a normal hour of the day, or to do things that they know will make them feel better, like taking a walk for a half hour in the sunlight, and yet they just can't seem to get their body to do it. And you are not alone in that. I have been there myself. I am there again right now. I was having an amazing couple of months where I was pushing myself forward toward recovery, and I was starting to walk, and I was starting to maintain better sleep habits, and I did make my output on the Angry GM much more consistent than it's been. And then I sort of went into this depressive crash where now I am convinced again that this is pointless. I have ruined everything over my years of kind of drifting because my mental health was getting worse and I wasn't taking care of it. And then I started drifting, and then I ended up being a terrible steward for this wonderful, very generous, very engaged community of people who deserve way better than what I have given them in the last year and a half, well, in the last 2 years now. And I am convinced that I have broken it all beyond repair, and that in 6 months I am going to be gone. There's no evidence for that. Well, I mean, there is. I'm not going to talk about that stuff. I am just going to say that your brain lies to you, and it compresses the future down to these inevitabilities where everything is ruined and you can't possibly change. Your brain lies to you, and your brain makes very, very simple things very difficult for you. There is no shame in this if you are out here there right now struggling just to do things that are simple for other people. Okay, I was talking to a friend recently who I know is going through a lot of struggles right now, way worse than I am, for way better reason. Well, not better reasons, but for way more reasons than I have to be struggling. And like me, he keeps getting into these moments where, okay, he's recovering and he's doing good habits and he's doing good things, and then he manages it for 2 days, 3 days, whatever it is, and then falls apart and crashes. And why does that happen when we're just trying to do very, very simple, normal things, like live a life that everybody else around us seems to be living okay, even though, remember, you have no idea what struggles anybody else has going on in their head right now, and everybody else is, or many people are just as struggling as you, and we're all just putting the mask on so nobody knows because we're ashamed that we are struggling with simple things. So here is the truth. The truth is that strength is not climbing 3 stairs on 2 broken legs that everybody else with 2 perfectly fine legs can climb. Okay, that's not what strength is. Strength is struggling to climb those 3 stairs on 2 broken legs 1,000 times and still getting up the 1,001st time and trying again. If you are struggling with mental health, if you are struggling with depression, anxiety, anything, you are trying to do the things other people are doing on 2 broken legs. Failing over and over again, however many times it takes, is not what determines your outcome. What determines your outcome is that you keep getting up that 1,001st time. And that's what I'm doing right now. I want to talk about the future and what I'm going to, what my big plans are for the upcoming month and what content I have in the till. While inside my head right now, I'm convinced it's pointless because nobody cares and it's all going to flop and I have no future anymore anyway, and I'm never going to finish anything and it's all ruined. Okay. I am going to keep getting up. 1,001, 1,002, 1,003. Until they put me in the ground, I'm going to keep getting up. Okay, it's the only way. And it sucks, and it's miserable, and it's hard, and nobody in the world knows how hard it is for you to do it except you. Except me. I know. So if you're getting up that 1,001st time, well, know that I'm on 1,002, or 1,003, or 1,010, or 5,000. So... And the only other thing I'll say is, don't suffer in silence. Tell someone. You will be surprised how much people really do want to love and support you when you're struggling. Most people do not want to see other people in pain. Most people want to reach out and give them hugs. You are not burdening anybody if you say, hey, I just need someone to know I'm not doing okay right now, but I am still getting up that 1,001st time. Okay, that's it. Speech over. Let's talk about my vision for June. I have been struggling for a time now to get my content publication back on track and to get bigger projects started that I've been intending to do for years that were all derailed over this long period of darkness and disaster in my life, of health problems, of personal losses, of just repeated kicks to the teeth. And I am finally now, after 2.5 months, because this really started in February. After 2.5 months, I have finally built up something of a lead on the work I'm doing. It's not great, and there's still some deadlines that I'm struggling to hit every week, but I have been putting out weekly early access content and weekly front page content. And I have been doing a lot of cleanup of technical issues that I have been ignoring for a couple of years now on the back end. So I have been basically trying to put it politely, unfuck my work that I have allowed to get completely fucked up. Okay. I am now at the point where I can say firmly that I now have a vision that I think I can pull off for June and going forward, for my website, for the community, for long-term future projects, though I'm not going to talk too much about long-term future projects right now. Okay? The first thing is this. I have always had 3 different pillars to my work. There are 3 different things people seek out my work for. Number 1 is general game mastering advice. People still want me to teach them how to run games and run less worst games. That has always been my bread and butter. I'm very good at breaking down game mastering. I'm very good at explaining things, even though I'm a bit wordy and a bit sweary. But that is something that I have always been sought out for. And people continue to request lots of evergreen advice. They keep asking me to revisit old topics and talk about things again and again. And so I want to make sure that every month I am hitting 1 or 2 topics of just general game mastering advice. The second thing that people come to me for is adventure design, encounter design, and scenario design. Because I consider myself to be a game designer, game master. I'm not one of these people who wants to run one of these open sandbox, dick around and do whatever you want, and I'll just make up shit on the fly kind of game masters. I have always been a game design game master because I love games. I grew up playing games. I used to play games with my dad. I grew up playing video games. Then I started running games and I kept playing games, and I love actual games. And that is what I want to give to people as a game master. And there is a lot of hunger by other game masters who want to do the same thing. They don't want to just dick around and throw players into a sandbox and just follow them around as they do their little faction bullshit and fight with each other and stuff, or put on their little shows with their fanfic characters. There are game masters out there who genuinely want to put quests in front of their players and dare their players to be bad enough dudes and dudettes to achieve the quests. There are game masters who want to run games for players who want to be Link and Luke Skywalker and Samus Aran and Hollow Knight, or, Hornet Silksong, or Elden Ring, or the Fallout Boy. No, that's a band. All of the characters from all of the games we grew up playing, we want to give our players the opportunity to do that shit. Okay? Quest, accomplish, achieve, overcome challenges, win or lose by your own skills and your own merits, good, solid, actual game design. And people want me to teach them how to write adventures and encounters that do that. So that's pillar number 2. Let's design adventures. I call it scenario design, but it's adventure design, it's encounter design, it's challenge design, monster design, call it what you will. Game masters want to know how to homebrew real, actual adventures. The third pillar is that there are people who absolutely love my mechanical hacks. When I throw together a subsystem or a set of tools for doing a particular thing in a game. These have been some of my most popular things. In fact, these are the things that get legs more than anything else, or when I put out something like in the past, I put out the tension dice thing, and the custom monster design for D&D, or like even my treasure designy, or my treasure hoard system and stuff. That's the stuff that consistently people are still pulling down off my website today. I know, I look at my stats and I love doing that stuff. And the reason why I fell off doing those hacks is because they are more time consuming than writing rants and advice. And as I have been struggling with the time I had to keep up with everything, that was kind of the first thing to go. Well, it's the second thing to go, because the first thing is bigger projects. So the third pillar is hacks. And so I want to make sure that every month I am putting out game mastering advice, which is kind of system agnostic, by the way, because I want to talk, you know what? I'm going to bring this up right now. There is a small number of vocal members of my community who have now taken it upon themselves to remind me often that they have left D&D, that they are no longer interested in Dungeons & Dragons. And that is fine. As far as I'm concerned, you can play and run whatever game and whatever system you want. And while I will make fun of systems and I will give my opinions of good and bad design, because I am an opinionated dude and I reserve that right, and it's my name on the door of the community, so I get to do that. At the same time, I will never begrudge anyone for having fun with whatever system they enjoy. But end of the day, I am still a dungeon master. I have never claimed to be anything else. I mean, I say I'm the Angry Game Master, and that was mainly because years ago, Wizards of the Coast was making a thing about things, so I decided to rebrand from the Angry Dungeon Master to the Angry Game Master. But beyond that, I still run and love D&D. So I am not going to abandon D&D, and I am not going to try and pretend I'm not inspired by D&D, and that when I work on my own projects, even if they're not D&D, D&D is still the game I grew up loving. Okay, and not just, like, I grew up playing the old shit. I am no stranger to old school D&D. I did grow up when we just called it school. It was, but I also transitioned to modern D&D. Because I like actual game design. I like games that aren't giant kludge piles of crap, which is what the old editions were. Sorry, but true. Okay, so, and 3rd edition is still my favorite edition, but I am still very much engaged with D&D. 4th edition, not so much. 5th edition 2024, because I'm not calling it 5.5, even if they say it's okay now, I'm not. But I am still a D&D guy at heart. So when it comes to mechanical systems and mechanical hacks and topical stuff, like, oh, I want to do a series on this, that, or the other thing, I'm always going to be writing from a D&D mindset. But my adventure design stuff, well, that transcends system, doesn't it? I mean, you might have to figure out how to use the tools in your system to use some of it, but the idea of how to structure an adventure and, how to do branching paths and design challenges and plan outcomes and inertia and momentum and stuff, that works in any system. And the general GMing advice is pretty much the same across the board. So 50% of what I do is not married to D&D. I can't help that the other 50% is, and I'm not going to apologize for it, because it's what I love and it's what inspires me to do what I do. So if I offer and say, hey, does anybody want a tool to do this? And you don't need the tool because you don't run D&D, that's fine. You can just stay quiet. You don't need to say, oh, I don't run D&D anymore. Okay, I'm trying to gauge interest from people who run D&D, whether they want a particular tool so I know to put resources in it. I'm going to be spending a certain amount of time hacking D&D every month. There's no point in you jumping in and saying, well, I'm not interested in D&D anymore. So, run what you want, love what you want. Most of my work is still D&D inspired, but most of it also transcends system. Anyway. Okay, so that being said, I want to so in June, what I want to do is every Tuesday, and I'm already here on some of this stuff, every Tuesday on the front page, there will always be the next article. That is for everyone, that is for the world. But people who support me on crowdfunding, on Patreon, get to read these articles 2 weeks early, and they will always come out on Wednesdays. So every Wednesday there will be an early access article, and then Tuesdays an early access article will move to the front page. Now, I am aware that because of a bit of a backlog, as I've been moving stuff around, as I've been playing with how links work and stuff, particularly because I publish my work on my own website and then put links to it on Patreon. And I don't want to make everybody who supports me on Patreon, because I have a lot of very generous fans supporting me on Patreon, I don't want to make them all have to have logins on my website for specific things. So I have a sort of members only set of areas on my website that I link to and then cycle it through to the main page. The workflow has gotten a bit jumbled, and I am simplifying how links and feeds work so that supporters can always find the 2 articles that are currently buried in early access, until they cycle through to the main page. And then when they cycle through to the main page, they will just be on the front page. And you can always find the old stuff there, and then it gets archived and all of that stuff. I'm aware that things are a little bit messy right now. I'm getting that all fixed. It's just taking a little bit of time. Also, for Patreon supporters, I distribute read-alouds of my articles. I used to call them proofread alouds. I'm still calling them proofread alouds, by the way. They were part of my workflow process where at the end of writing an article, because I draft every article and then I rewrite literally every word of every article to clean it up, shorten it, and punch it up. And yeah, I know, laugh, shorten it, ha ha ha. My articles get shorter as I revise them. And then I do like a proofreading pass through an electronic tool. And then I read my article out loud to see how it sounds and make final adjustments. And I got into the habit of recording these things because people found them very amusing because, well, my girlfriend at the time, she used to make fun of me because I would be sitting here reading my articles out loud, and then I would make mistakes or trip over words, and then I would make fun of myself, be like, oh yeah, that's what I read. Or I would make fun of stupid wording and say, okay, that's really stupid, and I would do crazy voices, and I would talk to myself endlessly and just crack myself up and have a grand old time. And people, turns out they really enjoy that crap for reasons I don't understand, and a lot of people would rather listen to articles than read them these days. So I understand that, and I will continue to distribute these to Patreon supporters through the channels that I already have. I have also taken to recording them live, and I have been, so in Discord, on the day that I'm recording the proofread aloud, I will announce, hey, I'm recording the proofread aloud, and people can sit and enjoy, and listen to the proofread aloud. And then I usually hang out and chat with people for a while afterwards, because people like that experience. And sometimes some stuff that ends up on the cutting room floor, they get to hear. So it's fun if you're in the Discord to hang out and listen live as I record them. But because I've been doing it basically at random, because I've been doing so many things at the last minute, nobody ever knows when these recordings are going to happen. They're just like, they're like flash mob events with just me reading an article out loud terribly. By the start of June, they will always be recorded on Friday afternoons at I think it's going to be mid-afternoon Eastern time. So like 2:30 Eastern time or something like that. It has to fit around something, but that's it. I am setting a day that will always be Proofread Aloud recording day. And it will always be Friday, and it will always be at a certain time, and I will announce that time, and now everybody knows when it's going to be, and they can all come and hang out if they want to hear it live. I have also changed my workflow so that the proofread alouds are no longer going to technically be proofread alouds. They are just going to be read alouds, but I will continue to call them proofread alouds, and I will continue to flub and screw up and leave in all my worst crap, and my stupid jokes and all of that stuff. But I will be doing a read aloud pass before I do the read aloud recording, so that there's not going to be any pauses where it's like, oh, I got to stop a second and rewrite this sentence, or I got to fix these links, or whatever it is. So they're just going to become read alouds, even though they are proofread alouds by title, and they're still true to the spirit of the proofread aloud. And those will be linked at the start of every early access article, and then distributed via a special feed that Patreon supporters have access to. Okay. Another thing I want to mention is that Patreon allows people to follow me without supporting me. And then you get access to a feed where you get the news, and then some of the stuff is posted for supporters only and supporters of different tiers, and some of the stuff is posted generally so that anyone who follows me gets notifications. And I have actually quite a lot of free followers. I'll call them followers. And I realized that I didn't really understand what Patreon does and is doing, because it's always been kind of secondary. Like I run my website, and Patreon was just a way for me to get support so that I could put out as much work as I do, because I make a lot of content, and I do it weekly, and it's hefty stuff. So, I need a lot of time to do it, and I couldn't do it without the support. And by the way, I'm very grateful. Over the last couple of months, as I've been talking about my struggles and my worries for the future of this whole thing, the whole Angry Games, the Angry GM thing, there has been a massive outpouring of support, reasonably massive outpouring of support over the last 2 months. And it was really heartening, and it really helped me feel like things were starting to turn around. So everybody who has thrown their support my way in the last 2 months, and of course everybody who has supported me for years, especially through all my worst times, I am extremely grateful for your generosity. I have done very little in the past 2 years to earn anybody believing in me. I have failed my community in a lot of ways. And no matter what good reasons I had and what was going on in my life, that is still true, that I have not been a good steward of my community. And the fact that so many of you continue to have trust in me, and that so many of you decided to trust that I could come back from the ashes and throw some extra support my way, has meant the world to me. I am the luckiest guy on earth, because I have an amazing community of engaged, generous, patient, trusting, loving supporters. And thank you to each and every one of you, as well as everyone who just reads my stuff. That's my sign-off message, but it came organically in the middle. Thank you, everyone. Not quite out of the woods yet. There's still a lot to rebuild, and that's what the next 6 months are going to be. The next 6 months are going to be rebuilding, restarting, resurrecting from the ashes, whatever we want to call it. Okay. Anyway, I did not realize that I was sending out endless notifications to everybody who follows me and who supports me on Patreon. And they're like, ding, 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 because I was putting out little news messages like, oh, this is changed and this is done and I did this and I did that. And I was just treating it like my blog and overwhelming people with notifications. I am going to stop that. I am not going to put out more than one thing a day, and most days not anything. Like little news items and stuff that we're just gonna skip some of that stuff. Because you really don't need to hear every thought that crosses my mind. Okay, I am sorry if you got hit with that. By the way, I'm also aware that a lot of people don't use Patreon. In fact, the vast majority of people who read my website don't use Patreon either just to follow me or to support me, and that is fine. But then you kind of miss out on some stuff. And I'm also aware that my website has stopped sending out email notifications when new articles are posted. And that is a system that I am working on. It has proven to be very resistant to fixing for reasons. But I still have the list of everybody who was subscribed to get those emailed updates. And the system will be fixed. It is very high on my priority list. There's a lot of little things that just need fixing right now. And then for those of you who follow me on Patreon, you have no need to subscribe to updates on my website and on Patreon. I will make sure that everything gets posted both places. So then you can just pick one or the other once everything is back online. Okay. And there's also RSS feeds and other feeds that I need to publicly present, because I know a lot of people used to just use an RSS feed to find my latest stuff. And those still exist and they're still working. They're just no longer advertised. So yeah, there's a big technical cleanup coming, and I'm aware of all of that. So what do? Tuesday, front page article. Wednesday, early access article. Fridays, read aloud recordings will be recorded, but then they will be distributed with the early access article. And that brings us to Thursdays. Thursdays will be the special day for the high tier supporters to get their fun. So Thursdays will be Slapdash Thursdays for people who follow the Club Slapdash project. That is when new blogs and new chats and things will be posted on Thursdays. Also, I am working on what I have been describing as bonus content. And I have been sort of like working on it in the background and trying to build a workflow for it, because it's a little more complicated than what I thought it would be. And my vision for it is a bit more than what I expected. Because I used to have this thing called the Secret Stash. And everybody who supported me at frenemy tier had access to the Secret Stash, which was mostly, it was just a dumping ground for anything I made for my own home game, and I would throw it in there. So there were maps and random monsters, and sometimes there was tie-in stuff for my articles. So there was just stuff in there and campaign documents and things, and it piled up, and I need to get that back online so that people who actually still want that stuff can do it. And then there was the year I was putting out quarterly theme packs, and I put out 3 quarterly theme packs, and those were neat, but proved to be a lot of work, and there was a lot more content in there, and so I couldn't keep up that kind of thing on a regular basis. And now what I've switched to is I have a list of, right now there's a list of 10 or 20 little random projects, basically table tools and game content and things that I'm turning into nice documents that I can distribute twice a month to everybody who has been generously supporting me at a high tier. While those folks who are more interested in Slapdash are also waiting for Slapdash. By the way, for anybody who doesn't know, Slapdash is my in-development RPG system, which right now, anybody supporting me at the Frenemy tier has access to discussions and previews. Right now, I've gone a little quiet on blogging about it because I have been kind of inventorying and putting the system together from the mess that it was in anticipation of running some big alpha tests with as many Club Slapdash members as I can. Probably in July and August, we'll be doing that to test the combat engine that has now been redeveloped to make sure that it is not a kludgy mess. And then we will move on to start distributing beta materials. But in all that time, I do intend to put out weekly blogs where I reveal, hey, this week I'm working on skills. Here's a little bit on how skills work. And this week I'm looking at the initiative stack. Here's how the initiative stack works. Just whatever I happen to be working on, just 1,500 words or 2,000 words. Here's some pictures of my notes. Here's some little details about it. And then, of course, the Slap Chats will happen every month. Which brings me to Monday nights, because a lot of folks turn out to hang out on Monday nights for things like this. Wow, we've got what have we got? Yeah, like two dozen people here on the Discord, I think, just a rough eyeball of people just listening to me yammer right now. And again, I've gotten to the point now where I'm stable in saying I do these Monday nights, but it's like, well, which Monday nights and which is what and yada, yada, yada. And then I was experimenting with audio video content that would be like basically an extra article in audio or audio video format for my supporters, which I started calling the Angry Deep Dives. And then we did Mystery Night and that went really well. And I'm working on the second one, which kept getting delayed. So here is the plan. Starting in June, every Monday night, there's a thing. Okay. The second Monday of every night will be of every month will be this live chat. The mostly monthly live chat will become the monthly live chat every Monday night at this time, which is, what do I start? 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Daylight Savings Time, whatever, New Yorkie time, whatever it is. Okay. The fourth Monday of every month at the same time will be the secret hangout for the Club Slapdash people to get their updates about Slapdash that are too much for little design blogs, and to hang out and ask me questions. And then I'm going to be delightfully obstructive in giving my answers, because that's a little game we play where people ask me questions and then I fuck with their head. But yeah, so, and then the other 2 Mondays of the month will be deep dive stuff. It'll basically be, here's an extra article delivered in audio or video format. Here's we're going to do the second part of Mystery Nights, which is going to be about writing investigation scenes. You know, how do you write a scene that players investigate and look for information at? And then we're going to do some stuff about designing not skill challenges, which is like, how do you make an encounter where the players have to do a bunch of stuff, which basically all amounts to just rolling die rolls over and over again, which is not the right way to do it. But, skill challenge is like, you can roll one of these 3 skills over and over again until your progress clock fills up. And by the way, somebody used the term progress clock in one of my Discord channels because friggin' Blades in the Dark. But I would like to remind you that before there were progress clocks, we already had the whatever stat, which is exactly the same thing as a progress clock. It's just more versatile and it's not in a circle. So what the hell is anyone using progress clocks for? You guys don't need progress clocks. You have the whatever stat. It's better. It could be negative. It could be positive. You could do a tug of war with it. There's all sorts of things you can do with it. You could do anyway, but that's maybe something that we'll have to talk about if we have a deep dive into how to build skill challenges. And those will be made available to everybody who has Patreon or has Discord access. So Anglican tier supporters and above will get to participate in and see the recordings of all the deep dives. And the recordings of everything will always be published the following Monday. I'm not going to try and rush them out 2 days later. So every Monday morning, there will just be a new recording for supporters. Okay. So that's it. That's my vision for June. That is my benchmark. I want to be doing that June 1st, which is 2 weeks from today. That might be a little ambitious. It might take another week or two into June to actually hit that timeline. And then I want to be, and the other thing is how this feeds into the 3 pillars, by the way, is there will always be one article of game mastering advice, one article of adventure or scenario design. And right now we have a pretty good dungeon to finish building, don't we? Because I promised I would teach you how to map a pretty good dungeon like a game. So we have a pretty good dungeon to finish. There will always be one article that is like a hack or a system or something like what I did last month this month, which was haggling. We're going to be looking at that. There are I'm going to mention 2 things that are in that queue. One of them you'll probably have in June. It's just a little thing I'm right now calling, the secret name is FCR 2024. I don't know if that's going to excite anyone, but it's just a little thing that I've been, toiling away at doing mathematical analysis for. And part of that, I want to say thank you specifically to a Discord member named JF, because JF did a bunch of data compilation for me, let's say. He helped me compile a lot of data that I needed to do this. So that's a thing that will be happening. And then the fourth article of each month, what I'm considering right now, because I like to do series on topics, and I have 3 things I'm looking at right now. And this is the audience participation portion. So when this recording gets posted, throw in the comments what your vote is for which topical topic you would like a 2 or 3 article exploration of over the summer months. Do we want to look at traps and how to do them way better in role-playing games, which will include both an analysis of traps from a game mastering and adjudication perspective, a hack with some new rules and some design advice? Or do we want to look at wilderness? Or do we want to look at town? Those are the 3 things, and they're all going to happen over the next, say, 3 quarters. Okay, because each one is going to be about 3 or 4 different articles, and I'll sneak stuff in. Traps, wilderness, town. Okay, which one do you want me to explore? Okay, though ultimately I have a feeling that town is going to end up being more hacks than anything. Oh, the other thing, by the way. So apart from the FCR, there's a little thing called the Tension Pool 2 Electric Boogaloo that is coming soon, which is kind of necessary for town. There's a whole thing, we have to do, okay. Yeah, I know, Tension Pool. We need to get back to it. We need to fix it. And we need to make it more useful for actual timekeeping instead of just this loosey-goosey little arbitrary bowl of dice. I have pretty clocks, which, by the way, I was also using time pool clocks before friggin' Blades in the Dark, okay? So I was even using clocks then in the tension. There was an alternate version of the tension pool that I mentioned in throwaway comments. That is the time pool that relies on, instead of throwing dice into a bowl, you have a clock. But it's actually a diegetic system because it represents timekeeping in the world. Okay. Yeah, thank you, Arthur. Arthur is saying, my players and I think tension pool is awesome. I think tension pool is awesome too. We should have a whole discussion about time and town and time in general, but especially in town. Wouldn't that be awesome? A whole discussion. If only there was a forum where we could have such a discussion. Yeah, time pool rolls off the tongue better. But the original, yeah, we are here now. But Knox wants me to talk about swarms. But first I have one more topic. Okay, two more things. Okay, by the way, if you are just here for the news of what's happening in June and you've been hanging out for a really long time now, you can feel free to check out. Now this is just going to be yammering and babbling from here on out. And this is going to be internal stuff anyway. This is going to be stuff for the community, whereas everything else was just sort of vision for how the website's going to go for the next few months as I try to bring this shit back to life somehow. All right. In case anybody didn't notice in the Discord, I have reopened a thing called Angry's Coffee House. I did this after a request from several people, but most importantly was Zoot, who missed the Angry Coffee House. The Angry Coffee House is open for business. It is a voice Discord channel, which is not restricted, so anybody can join it and chat freely. Anytime you want, you can just hang out in the coffee house and chat amongst yourselves. It will not work if people don't hang out in it, though. So, like, because if every time people log on, there's nobody there, then nobody's going to log in. So what generally seems to happen is someone joins it and then a few other people trickle in. So it's the sort of thing that you kind of leave open. And I'm going to start making a habit of showing up there in the morning before work at the very least, or in the afternoon during a lunch break, or when I'm doing stuff that doesn't require my immediate attention. So I will try to hang out there more, though I'm also working overtime right now to, like I said, unfuck the mess. So, you know, but it is there. Feel free to use it. And, you know, even if it looks empty, jump in there because it starts a domino effect when people jump in. Okay. Though I will point out, I have not seen Zoot in there even once yet, but maybe it's been happening when I have not been looking at the Discord. Okay. Here's the other thing, and this is specifically for Anglican members of the Discord community. I need to run, I want to run a D&D game. Okay. I am running Not D&D right now as my personal Thursday night game. That game, by the way, it hit a massive disaster, and I feel absolutely horrible about this because it hit a massive disaster. And I am struggling to recover it. I had what was essentially a TPK, except it wasn't. Because the module I'm running was badly designed for the system, and it was a complete mess, and I essentially had a TPK, and all the investigators got hospitalized. And now I need to rewrite everything to allow a strike team to go in and clear a site so that the investigators can go in after the site has been cleared. And I see, because I could just do it like hand wavy, right? Like I could just say, okay, well, the institute, the clandestine institute you were. So it's a modern game. It's a setting called Dark Matter. Nobody asked, but here we go. I'm going to talk about this. So I'm using a system called Alternity, which is one of the last things TSR published before they were saved from disaster by Wizards of the Coast, back when Wizards of the Coast was still on, lawful good instead of what they are now. Okay? So it was published in 1998. It is an absolutely awesome science fiction setting system, even though it has a ludicrously complicated dice system. I find it intuitive and easy to work with, and so I can guide my players through it, but it keeps giving my players headaches, and I thought it was simpler than it seems. But now, and I realize that what I've become now with Alternity is the equivalent of those people who keep insisting THACO wasn't confusing once you got used to it. And smarming it. This conversation came up again recently in the Discord about THACO, and I had to set a few things straight on that record. Because every time somebody mentions that THACO is a really bad game mechanic, THACO, see, people don't realize THACO was a speed hack to fix two other really unintuitive, clumsy mechanics because D&D didn't always have THACO. So THACO was the speed hack. It was the Band-Aid to fix those clumsy mechanics. Because they didn't know from game design back then. They had no idea, and they weren't game designers. They were wargamers who decided to make their own game with blackjack and hookers, and they sure ever did. Because the AD&D, I believe there is an appendix on gambling, and I know there is at least one table on hiring harlots. So they literally did. Maybe it's not an appendix on gambling. Maybe there's rules on gambling. I don't remember. I haven't looked back in a while. But they literally did just make their own war game with blackjack and hookers. I'm not being facetious. But anyway, so now I'm the guy who's insisting, actually the situation or control die plus situation die in Alternity isn't confusing at all once you internalize it. But anyway, I really love the system, and I'm running a specific setting for it called Dark Matter, which is basically the modern world. It's X-Files, the role-playing game, which is not the same as urban fantasy, because everybody now thinks that supernatural and science fiction investigation is urban fantasy, and it's not. This is not urban fantasy. This was what Mulder and Scully were looking into. Conspiracies and aliens and government cover-ups and monsters of the week and cryptids and things like that. So, I've been running this game. This was going to be a stopgap game. This was just a couple of months while I tried to get our real campaign back up and running. And it has been going on for a long time, and it is going on at a time when I have been struggling. And I must admit that with all of my mental health struggles, I have gone back to isolating myself and hiding from people and not interacting, all of which is very bad things to do, and you shouldn't do it. But anyway, and so a lot of games have been canceled, and then this disaster happened where they got themselves TPK'd, basically wandering into a medical facility that was doing research on an alien virus that was getting out. And they wandered into this facility being like, hello, we're here to inspect the facility kind of a thing, not realizing that the security response was going to be shoot first and ask questions never. And the system really isn't designed to be combat heavy. And this particular module was written by Bruce Cordell, who is not a slouch. He's a good designer and has no business making as much a mess out of this adventure as he absolutely has. And I hate this adventure, and I hate what happened to it. This was also the adventure where I designed a car chase where they were going to drive away from a black helicopter, like a conspiracy helicopter. It's not a race thing. It's a conspiracy helicopter. It's not the race of the helicopter. So it's a conspiracy helicopter that was coming after them, and there was going to be this awesome chase scene, and we rolled a series of, between all of us at the table, rolled a series of 8 critical failures in a row. And so the players took off in their SUV, immediately drove it into a tree, then backed out and then drove it into another different tree, which was enough to then fatally injure several passengers in the car, leading to basically the scene was over. Meanwhile, the NPC piloting the helicopter immediately lost control of the helicopter. It started listing, went into a spin, and then fell out of the sky. So, and then we followed it up by them going to the conspiracy headquarters, secret government research lab, not government, secret corporate research lab, and immediately getting TPK'd because it turned out to be a combat in a system where combat is supposed to be rare. So yeah, so I could now fix the whole thing by saying, okay, you guys recover in the hospital, and meanwhile, the Hoffman Institute sent in a strike team to neutralize the location, and then just hand wave it away, just so that we can get to some kind of an ending. But I don't want to do that. So I'm like, well, I'm going to do the strike team thing, but I'm going to let you guys play the strike team. Okay? And so I'm going to give each player a strike team member that is equipped to actually do like a hot insertion type thing, you know, and then fight their way and neutralize the facility. And then the characters can be brought in when it's neutralized to do the investigation portion. The problem is, making characters in this system is also a nightmare. There are no pre-generated characters of any kind that would fit this. And on top of that, because this system came out in 1998, computers hadn't been invented then. That's a lie. Obviously we did have computers. But there are no like character generator tools. And also the map of the location, because now I'm doing a strike team and a tactical thing. I can't get by with the crap that's in the book. I now need tactical maps. So I'm like, great, I'm rewriting this entire chapter of the adventure. And then dealing with Biscuit and dealing with my own issues and just being generally depressed and miserable about the whole thing. It's like, I don't want to do this anymore, but I have to get to an ending. So that's what's going on. So that's my personal for fun game. It has broken my spirit. I have never been so dispirited by a game. And I once ran Torchbearer. Okay, which Torchbearer is what if Burning Wheel was as miserable as Darkest Dungeon. That's what Torchbearer is. Torchbearer is Burning Wheel. So already, already. But then it's like, and what if adventuring was just a miserable experience that ground you into dust? What if it was like Shadowgate for the NES, but instead of dying, you get to keep living. You just get to accumulate the miserable scars and conditions of your adventure. And so within 3 sessions, every character is hungry, tired, stressed. Some of them are and these are this isn't just me saying, and everybody was hungry and tired. There are literal game conditions. The game imposes these conditions on you where the whole party is eventually hungry and tired and stressed and miserable and just wants to go home and probably has hemorrhagic conjunctivitis, whatever. I ran that for 12 sessions. And we hated every minute of it and had a blast. But this is the game that broke my soul. Okay? This is the one that is seriously making me rethink. As a game master, you can have fun running anything. Anybody who complains about a system ruining their fun is a shit game master. Okay? I can get a good game out of Torchbearer. I can get a good game out of Fate. I have gotten many a good game out of Fate. I have gotten good games. I don't even, you know what? It doesn't matter. Okay. You can like systems and not like, no, 3 Costume Fairy Adventures. Zoot is excommunicated and I am closing the coffee club. I mean, I did run Panty Explosion Perfect for 3 months. Which the title is a little bit misleading because it has surprisingly little tentacle porn. That's how I told it to the players. I'm like, let's try this. It has surprisingly little tentacle porn. So the thing is, so the title is a joke. Okay? It's basically magical anime schoolgirl. The role-playing game. And it has actually a really neat action resolution mechanic that is based on rivalries and no, Traveler is the one where you can die in character generation. It's got life path character generation, and one of the big selling points is that your life path is you died before you started your adventures. You know, like you were killed in a Space Marine training accident or some bullshit like that. That's Traveler. Okay, so anyway, so Panty Explosion Perfect is a magical hentai. No, not hentai. Damn it, hentai is different. It's magical schoolgirl anime. Okay, that's all it is. And I know. I don't know what yes, it's Sailor Moon. It's like Sailor Moon. And it's totally innocent. And the guy who made it, okay, I gotta look this up now. And the guy who made it, he wanted to have a Jake Richmond. Okay, because he also did this comic about like a cute Medusa that ends up accidentally teleporting into the real world. Unless I'm thinking of someone else. Modest Medusa? Yeah, Modest Medusa. A surprisingly adorable comic about a Medusa that is teleported in the real world and ends up being this guy's roommate. It's a fun webcomic. Check it out. Anyway, so Jake Richmond made it, and he wanted to do it like a joke title, and he also wanted it to make it seem like the title had been badly translated from Japanese. And so he settled on Panty Explosion Perfect. Which he now regrets immensely because it gives a slightly wrong impression of the game. Okay? So it's not really naughty at all. Okay? And it's a very light, it's not mechanically hefty. It is actually very light. It is like a storytelling system, really. Okay, but there's this whole system of rivalries and best friendships, and every character has a rival, and every character has a best friend, and they resolve, like the rival and the best friend, they get to resolve the actions you take. Oh, shit. You know what? This all got me off topic. I want to run a D&D game. I want 3 people from the Discord to join my D&D game, and I want to experiment with streaming it just within my community. Was the point. I am going to put out a poll within the next week to try and gather 3 people. Yeah, I did. I got the chat is pointing out that I got distracted by panties. Which we've all been there. Okay. So, I want to run a D&D game as an experiment. Because I have always wanted to stream a game, and I'm terrified to stream a game, and I don't know how to do it. Okay. And I want to do it as an experiment. And I want to do it because if I can do it, I can do something really cool with that. Okay. But that's for future, whatever. So what I want to do is I want to run a D&D 2024 one-shot, like 4-session game for 3, maybe 4 people who are members of my Discord community, and stream it one night a week into the Discord community. And if it goes well, I will consider doing more streaming and doing it on broader channels. But this is just an experiment. And also I need to learn how to use Foundry. That's the other thing. So I will be putting out a poll trying to gather people who would be available to play in this on, likely it's going to end up being Tuesday, Wednesday, or Friday evenings around the same time I do these live chats. Yes, and Kate is jumping ahead with some questions. So it'd likely be Tuesday, Wednesday, or Friday. We would settle on a night. That's part of what the poll is. And then it would be streamed into the Discord for everybody else who wants to watch it. It would be recorded and distributed via Patreon for anybody who wants to watch the recordings afterwards, who can't participate in the streams. It might be cast to a secret members only YouTube-y place instead. That might be easier. I'm exploring it. Whoever participates would need to be comfortable, obviously being streamed, obviously being on camera. But one of the goals that I am going to do for this game is we're doing grungy D&D. Okay. We're not doing voice actors sitting around in their awesome studio, with their anime artwork characters and the stream voting on what happens next and all of that shit. I want to run a real game of D&D like actual real humans would run it for 3 other people online. Okay? And just let people watch, but we're going to pretend like we're not streaming. We're just going to have a game. Okay. And, right? Because that's what I actually want out of stream games, is what Knox wants. One of the things I have noticed as I have been hanging out in the bigger DMing community, paying attention to what people are talking about on D&D Beyond and on Reddit and on certain other locations, a lot of GMs are feeling very, very pressured to imitate what they see being done online. And it is breaking their spirits. There are a lot of DMs in the world right now who have broken spirits. It's really sad. I'm noticing a lot of patterns here. And we're not going to blame Critical. So this is the thing. I am not going to blame Critical Role or, the D&D crew, whoever they are, or any of the other big streamers for doing this. Okay? And the reason I'm not going to do that is because nobody blames the NFL because their touch football games in their backyards on Thanksgiving aren't the same. Okay? It is a ridiculous thing to think anybody should look at what's going on there and say, we can't have the NFL, we can't have the Green Bay Packers playing football because then people who just want to play football in their backyard will feel bad that they're not the NFL. So that's bullshit. Okay. But we do need to show some basement D&D. And I don't think there's too many people doing basement D&D. And even the people who start doing basement D&D, they get bigger. And the reason I have always been scared of doing streaming is I'm a stammering, stuttering moron. Okay? I have, for the last 12 years, I have been telling, 12? I don't know what year it is now. 14. For the last 14 years, whatever it's been, however long it's been, I have been telling people how to run the best D&D games possible. But here's the dirty little secret. You sit me down at a table, there's things I'm good at, and I can run a pretty good game, but I'm also just a normal game master. Okay, I'm just a dude. Okay, and I get stupid, and I forget words, and repeat myself over and over again, and forget to stop talking all the time. Okay, especially online. Running online is such a struggle. It's so hard. And really, my one group, my for fun group is an online group, and I run them without cameras, and that's really terrible. It's a disaster. I will never, ever do that again. I will never, ever agree to run an online game without cameras again. It's just worse. Okay, it is inexcusably awful. If, like, no webcam is just the worst. I let this group get away with it because they don't, some of them are camera shy and some of them don't have cameras, and that's fine. And we have been gaming together for years, and I love them. They're an awesome group, and I love running games for them. Present game accepted, and they are not the problem in the present game. The problem in the present game is the game itself. But never again am I doing the no webcam thing. Okay. So, I am going to be recruiting 3 players to do a simple online D&D game and experiment with streaming it within my community so that if it is a disaster, then it never needs to be spoken of again. But if it's not a disaster and we have a good time, then there is a possibility for future things. So what it would require is these 3 people would need to commit to being happy being streamed for, and I would set a definite time limit. It's like four sessions, I'm thinking. Fairly simple. We will be discussing character generation quietly, privately, because I am not going to let too much mess get into it. So, the players will have to be happy with heavily curated character generation. And we're just going to try and do D&D 2024 by the book because it's fine. I know. It's fine. It really is fine. It's fine. Okay, it'll be fun, I promise. And and then we'll just have like a perfectly normal, crappy adventure. It's going to be completely adequate. That's what it is. It is going to be a completely adequate, simple game. Okay? And that's it. So I'm just going to put out a poll. I'm going to try and recruit. And then we're going to figure out a night. And then I'm going to stream it. And then we're going to see what happens. And if it goes well, who knows? Maybe there's a camp. Yeah, several people are typing. And a lot of it is going to come down, like, the biggest thing in the poll is obviously going to be who can commit to the schedule. Okay, because that's number 1, is who can commit to 4 weeks. Because once I promise the stream, we got to do it. We got to do it. And we got to be able to deliver it on time every week. So the people have to be able to commit. And I'm only doing 3 right now just to keep it manageable. I might do 4. I'll see what the responses are like. And then I'm not going to, if it comes down to there's a lot of people available, then it's probably just going to be random. I try to be as fair as possible. That said, there are some people who have been in my community supporting me for a very long time who have been desperately waiting for the opportunity to participate in a game that I've run, and they missed out on previous events like the League of the Blue Cloak and the Summer of Fall of Silverpine Watch and all of that. And I am aware of who those people are, and I am going to give some priority to those folks. But I'm gonna try and be as fair as possible, and then hope maybe this will build into something where every couple of months I'll do something like this, or I don't know. I don't know what to do beyond it. Right now, this is just a proof of concept. Can I stream a game and will it be a disaster? And will it be an okay disaster? And and like I said, then you're all gonna see what it's like when I actually sit down and run a game, and I'm a stammering, stuttering moron. I have my good moments. I have my bad moments because I'm just an absolutely normal, grungy DM who just runs games in his basement like normal human people. And I would kind of like to become sort of the poster child adult person. I would like that to be like, I've always considered myself a blue collar DM. For all my talk about game design and narrative and whatever, at the end of the day, I am a blue-collar DM. I'm a guy who, I'm working in my garage. Okay? I am just slapping shit together. I've gotten very good at slapping shit together, and I can tell you how to put stuff together really good. But at the end of the day, it's like, I'm like the guy who knows a lot about cars, but I'm still just building cars in my basement. Okay, I'm not an engineer. I'm just a guy who learned a lot about cars so he could build cars in his basement. And the reason why I learned so much about it is because I want to give everybody else the opportunity to run really good games in their basement. That's all I want. You know what? I just want to give everybody the opportunity to run really good games for their friends. That's all I have ever wanted from this. Even the whole Slapdash thing is ultimately just, I want to give the game system that I wish 10-year-old me and every other person who is like 10-year-old me had. When he read this and said, this is the way I can make games for my friends. This is the way I can gather people at my table or my virtual table, and I can give them the games that I love playing. I just finished King's Quest V, and now I want to do an awesome game where the players have to do something like where they have to go, find the wizard Shadrach and rescue the family from being shrunk or whatever. Or, wow, I just ran Chrono Trigger and now I'm going to do, what would be really cool? Oh, this was my Chrono Cross game, was The World That Never Was. That was the game about the immortals. There were so many inspirations from Chrono Cross in there. Okay. But anyway, that's all I want. That's all I want. And somewhere along the way, I lost the plot and it got stupid complicated and I let things get way out of hand and then I lost control of things and I just want to get back to that. I just want to get back to making good stuff for people. And then we all have a good time and we all love games. And at some point I got really negative and I started just talking crap about everything. And then everybody else turned negative and now we're all just pissing and moaning about how Wizards of the Coast is destroying D&D and this is this and that is that and all of it. It's like, you know what? No, I just want to sit around and have fun with my friends. And I consider everybody in this community my friend. Even though you pay me for the privilege of me calling you a friend. It's a weird relationship. But anyway, that's it. I just want to have some fun games. And I want to give everybody else the opportunity to have fun games. And I don't think there is a game system out there anymore that is giving people the kind of fun I want to give people. That's Slapdash. Okay? I think D&D is still the closest thing out there. I'm not going to pretend D&D is a great system, and I'm not going to pretend I like the direction that it has gone. I certainly don't. I describe it as the worst game system out there except for every other system because at least it actually gives me tools for adventure building. Whereas every other system out there is just kind of whatever about it. Okay, where there's no sense to things like encounter building and no thought about attrition mechanics and challenge mechanics and this and that and the other thing. And it's all just, I don't know, just make up a story or whatever. There are a few systems out there like that, but then they lack rigor. And then there's Pathfinder. Pathfinder could have been the thing. If I had to go back, if I had to run a system that wasn't D&D, if all my D&D books evaporated, I would be running Pathfinder 1. I might even try Pathfinder 2. I still haven't tried it. I've read it. It has neat ideas. It seems over-engineered. But I can't give an opinion because I do not give opinions of games that I have not run at least 10 sessions of. And I do not believe anybody can have an opinion of a game they have not played at least 10 sessions of, or run 10 sessions of. So anyway, that's the point is I want to run a game. I want to try and stream it. I want to see what happens. And worst case scenario is it's just a good time. Best case scenario is it's something that I can do regularly going forward and then maybe put it out there to the world, and then sort of use it as another tool for showing people how to run a good game like a normal human person. And how to keep things in your head. And then you can see how often I don't remember to talk to my players about their characters and how I drop the Fabergé egg of pacing all the friggin' time. you can say, hey, Angry kind of sucks at this, huh? It's like, yeah, there's a lot to do. Anyway. So we want to talk about swarms. By the way, if anybody has any questions or comments, now's the time. Everyone sucks at it. The only thing to do is keep trying. Gosh, that sounds so familiar. That sounds like a speech I gave an hour and 15 minutes ago. Being a good GM is going back to your 1,001st game. I have never run Fatal. Stu is asking, have you ever run Fatal? I have never run Fatal. I have read Fatal. You have to, it's a history thing, right? You have to read Fatal. It is just as awful as the rumors would have you believe. But no, nobody would ever run it. But then at least it didn't lie. It advertised exactly what it was going to be. And you know what? If you want to, I am all for any consenting adult, or any games consenting adults want to play together they have a right to do. I'm not going to stop 2 or 5 consenting adults from playing any game they want. Okay? I don't necessarily agree that morally speaking, these are all good games, but any game that anybody is willing to make and play and buy has a right to exist. That is how it works. But anyway, would zero experience in D&D since Pathfinder 1 be an issue with the stream game? No, I have taught people how to play D&D before. It'd probably be good to have someone who's completely clueless there. Let's just set this up for complete disaster. I'm going to be learning a new virtual tabletop because I have to move off Fantasy Grounds. And I have to be aware of what the current technology is for reasons that do not need to be discussed right now. But Foundry is where it's at. So I'm going to be doing that. I'm going to be running online, which is the worst way to run, streaming a game for the first time. Let's bring in people who have no idea how to play the game, too. Yeah. No, it's awesome. I have never, ever in my life stopped someone from joining a game because they didn't know the system. Never. There has never been a time where I invited someone, hey, do you want to play whatever? I'm going to run a game of whatever this weekend. Do you want to play? And I've never played or heard of that game. That's okay. Come on. It's my job to know the rules. You don't have to worry about it. Just roll the dice I tell you to roll. You're fine. Okay. All right. Swarms. Nox, in the thread is like the only question I got in the thread that's been open for 2 weeks. Asked, how do I write a good encounter with swarms? And turns out this was a thing that I didn't think I would have a lot to say, but I actually do, because swarms piss me off. Okay. Here is the problem with swarms. The problem with swarms started in 2nd edition, when they decided to stat them up as monsters. And it was okay in 2nd edition, and it was okay-ish in 3rd edition, but it kept getting worse and worse and worse. And now in our modern editions of D&D, swarms are now atrocious. And the problem started because they are statted up as monsters. If you want to run a good encounter with a swarm, you cannot run a combat, because you cannot fight a swarm. This is the fundamental problem. You cannot fight a swarm. I want you to imagine right now, okay, that a knight maybe not a knight. Okay, that a barbarian goes out onto a battlefield, okay, and he has a giant ass mace, and 10,000 killer bees swarm him. And I want you to tell me that he is fighting a combat. Okay? Don't think about the rules. Don't think about the game mechanics. Don't think about anything else. I want you to picture in your head a barbarian walking out and being swarmed by 10,000 killer bees and fighting them off with a mace. And I want you to tell me how that goes. Okay? Are we rolling initiative? Are we making attacks? Does he eventually kill the swarm? The answer is you're stupid. Okay? That you don't fight a swarm. Okay? Same thing. Or here's another one. Indiana Jones, he discovers the location. Nox Eternus right now is typing to clarify. I'm going to predict exactly what Nox Eternus is typing right now. Actually, I knew that you shouldn't stat it up like a monster, and what I was asking for is advice about how you would do it instead, because I know monsters are the wrong approach, and I want a better approach. Well, I am going to give you the better approach, but you have to get through the rant first. Okay? And the rant is, we have to talk about how we got here. Because the solution is in thinking about how we got here. Okay. Indiana Jones goes down into the Well of Souls to get the Ark of the Covenant. And there in the room, the entire floor is snakes. Right? Remember that? The entire floor is snakes. Okay? Now I want you to imagine that he takes out his gun and fights his way through the snakes. Okay? How does that go? How does that go for, assuming he's not snake phobia, arachnoph, nope, snake phobic. It's got to be something, right? What is it? What is the snake phobia? It starts with an H. It's something. No, not hepatic. Herpetophobia. But a herpetologist is the study of snakes. Stu has it? It's a phidiophobia? No. Oh, and Kate is saying that. Oh, okay. That's all reptiles. So we're going to be technical now, right? You know what? Swarm discussion is over. I don't want to do this now. Ophidiophobia. Yeah, fair enough. It's fine. Though in common usage, the two are conflated. So herpetophobia and ophidiophobia are commonly interchanged. So whatever. Nobody cares. Okay. Interestingly enough, the approach to swarms back in 2nd edition actually wasn't that bad. It wasn't great, but it wasn't that bad. And old school essentials, which pulled from BX D&D, actually did a halfway decent approach too, but again, starting from the idea that you treat a swarm as a creature that can be fought off. Okay, but this is the first thing. Okay, it was noted. Okay, so even 3rd edition actually was better about swarms than. Because I went and I checked this. Okay, so for instance, this is interesting. So in 3rd edition, you had to define the size of the creatures in the swarm. Okay, and if they were diminutive or fine, which basically that's like the size of like ants and flies and things, they were immune to all weapons. Okay. Which, that's a good start right there. It's like, you can't fight a swarm with weapons. And maybe a crushing weapon. But like 2nd edition has, so I gotta tell you, because I went down the rabbit hole on this to see when this bullshit started, honestly. Because I didn't remember. I did remember 2nd edition had rules for it. So here are the fun rules, by the way, in 2nd edition for when you're making a swarm. Okay, so let's say you're doing a swarm of locusts. Okay. To determine the size of the swarm of locusts, roll 1d100 and multiply the result by 10,000, then double it because locusts swarm more than other bugs. Okay, so it's 1d100 times 10,000. That's the number of locusts in the swarm. Now, if you attack the swarm and do damage to the swarm, each hit point of damage inflicted kills 1d20 insects. I shit you not. So let's say I roll a 51 times 20,000. So that's 1,020,000 locusts in the swarm, and each hit point of damage kills an average of 11 of them, which means you need 92,000 attacks to destroy a swarm. Now, I'm actually fine with that there is no number of attacks that will actually beat the swarm. Right? I'm fine with that. Though if half the swarm is killed, the other half scatters. But at that point, what I don't understand is why you don't just say, attacking the swarm is worthless and does nothing. Like, why not just at that point? It's like, because, well, we're going to resolve all 93,000. Because as soon as you do that, like, you write this down, and the DM then has to do this, right? Like, if I'm writing my adventure, and now I've got my locust swarm, and the locust swarm comes over the horizon, as the players are, traversing the fields, and it's locust swarm season, and now the locusts come and they swarm, and the players find themselves trapped in the locust swarm. Well, I had to actually roll out that, okay, there's 1,020,000 locusts in this swarm. And then the players are like, well, I'm going to start waving my sword around. If the entire swarm is killed, award 2,000 experience points. That's nice. All right. So here is the thing with a swarm. A swarm is a hazard. A swarm fills an area, right? That's the first thing. A swarm fills an area and it can move, and it can get bigger and smaller. It can spread, it can move, whatever. Okay. It does not have a position on the battlefield. It does not have an armor class. It cannot be attacked. Waving weapons in the midst of a swarm. Actually, so Old School Essentials has a very interesting rule here. It's called warding off. Characters who stand in the swarm and brandish weapons, they suffer half damage from the swarm. Okay? They suffer half damage from the swarm, and that's the best you can do. No position on the battlefield. First of all, number one, it's a swarm. It's not a monster, so it's not on the battlefield. Okay? It does not have a position on the battlefield because there's not a battlefield. It fills an area. And that area can move and change shape and change size. So there is no point at that point of doing anything other than drawing a blob on the battlefield and saying, and here, this area is covered with a carpet of poison spiders. Okay? If you are in the area of the swarm, you are getting hurt by the swarm. Okay? That's the first thing. No matter what, and this is something that's been consistent from edition to edition, that basically swarms don't make attack rolls. It's just you're in the area of the swarm is covering you and biting you, right? If the swarm is made of large enough creatures, by the way, like if you're doing a swarm of vampire bats, then I would actually allow... Even then, no, the weapon is just warding off. And I really like the warding off rule. Okay? So you're standing there in the swarm and you're waving a weapon around, and the weapon is basically doing nothing but reducing some of the damage that you're taking. That's fine. Okay? So the next thing is, once you're in the swarm, and you have to define different swarms differently. This is where you have to start thinking about the creatures involved. Like if you have like crawling insects, right? Because this is what we're doing. We're just trying to figure out a pile of mechanical rules for handling the swarm. And the first thing is, the swarm just fills an area. There is no point in defining the area's size and shape. Okay, because the swarm is just filling whatever area you want. You can say, well, it should be roughly the same volume. Like if the swarm spreads out too much, then the swarm is actually dispersed, but, and you can decide if that's something that you need to handle. You know what a good use for this might be is a whatever stat, where the whatever stat tracks the size and the cohesiveness of the swarm. Okay, that is that at a certain point. So you give cohesiveness, there's probably a better word for it. The organization of the swarm. Okay. Actually, you could do two. Oh, this is interesting. We could do two stats. How complicated do we want to make this? Is this an encounter? No, it's not density. Okay, it's whether the swarm is moving as a swarm or whether it has started to disperse. I don't need, it's just, we're not going to, like this, we're arguing about terminology here, which means what we're not doing is building good game ideas. You can call it whatever the hell you want. We're going to call it organization. How organized is the swarm? Is the swarm tightly organized into a swarm, or is it starting to disperse? Okay, because once it has dispersed too much, then the swarm falls apart. It just becomes a bunch of insects flying off in different directions. And then it spreads, or the snakes all slither off in different directions and go away, right? Because that's how you don't kill a swarm, you break it up. And once you have broken up the swarm enough, the creatures disperse. Their little individual survival instincts kick in and they stop behaving like a swarm, and then they disperse. And then you can have things like killer bees are much harder to disperse. They are much more organized swarms. And then the other thing is you could actually have a size of the swarm. And you could even set a rule that says as the size of the swarm goes up, their organization goes down. So maybe you have 2d10s that you use as trackers on the table, right? And tracker number 1 is the size of the swarm in, say, squares of radius, or the contiguous number of squares it can fill, right? And every time the size goes, like, and you decide what the baseline is. Like, okay, so the swarm is size 5 or 6 or whatever, and its organization is 5, right? And every time the size goes up, the organization goes down. And every time the size goes down, the organization goes up. But players can, or something like that. Okay, yeah. Yeah, and every time the organization goes down, the size goes yada, yada, yada. And then if the organization ever drops too low or the size gets too high, the swarm is dispersed. So now you have these two things and you can use them to adjust each round. And then you could use tokens to track the area of the swarm if you wanted to. It depends on how complicated you want to be. Okay? Or you can just do it the simple way where you have a stat that is just the organization of the swarm, and you decide, okay, this area of the floor is covered in snakes. And if the snakes become too disorganized, the swarm just disperses, right? And anybody in the area is attacked. Basically, anybody who's in that space is attacked. They take the damage. Not even rolls, because at that point, like, defense is not even a thing. Even if you're wearing armor, if it's something that can get inside your armor, it's D&D armor. We have to make allowances here, right? So yada yada. Maybe people wearing armor can take half damage or something like that. And then they just get stung in their hands and the visors of their eyes and things like that. Then you're just stung in the eyes. Right? Or they get in your helmet, whatever it is. Okay? So that's number 1, is that if you're in the area of the swarm. But now here's the other thing, and this is where you start thinking about how different swarms behave. Okay? Flyers and creepers will behave differently. Animals that are on the ground and flying insects or flying swarms behave differently. Okay, so because the flyers can cover more of a person's body, so they do more damage, right? And the more organized the swarm is, maybe it does more damage. That is another thing. As the swarm is really, really tightly organized, there are more creatures in every space of the swarm, so they are doing more damage. And creepers, things on the ground, if you fall prone, well, now you're taking double damage. And so these are the things that we're thinking about here as we're trying to work out a pile of how would I handle a swarm, right? We're just trying to think about all the different conditions. And for the first part, we're just thinking how the swarm hurts people. It's like, obviously the swarm only hurts people if they're in it. The swarm would hurt, creepers would hurt less, but if you fall prone, you're really screwed. Flyers would hurt more. But being prone doesn't really matter. Okay. Another thing that never gets talked about with swarms, but was talked about in 3rd edition, was distraction. Is that if you're in the area of a swarm, it is impossible to do anything that requires you to be able to see or to be able to concentrate. So while you are in this swarm, you're basically, especially flyers. Okay, like if the swarm is creepers, that might not necessarily be the case, right? But if the swarm is flyers, and so now we're thinking about how are we going to define a swarm? We're going to define creepers and flyers, and I am stealing that designation from old school essentials. But I'm also going to say that there is another question about this, and this question is stickiness. Does the swarm stick to you when you leave it? Okay, because if you are in a swarm full of snakes and you run out of the swarm full of snakes, well, the snakes can chase you, but they don't stick to you. Whereas if it's something like spiders or bees, then they're crawling all over your body. And as you escape the swarm, they are now still doing damage to you round after round after round. So yeah. And if you are wearing armor, maybe you have to strip off your armor, as Jorkon says, or something like that. And then it's like, well, what do you do in those cases? Well, you can roll around on the ground and crush the things. You can dive into water, right? Things like that. We don't have to, now we have to be careful here, by the way, not to take this shit too far. Okay, because now we can get overcomplicated. And we don't want to get overcomplicated. But we have these basic ideas now, right? You're in the area of the swarm. You're taking damage from the swarm is just doing what it does. It might be poisonous, like snakes are poisonous. So every round you're taking damage and you have to roll a thingy, okay, or roll a save or whatever to not get poisoned, yada, yada, yada. Okay. And then if you escape the swarm, if it's a sticky swarm, then it keeps damaging you even after you're out of the swarm. And we want to keep track of the organization, and maybe we want to keep track of the size of the swarm. We can decide if those two things are both worth keeping track of, and we can make it so that they work against each other, right? The bigger the swarm, the less organized it is. And if the swarm gets too big or too disorganized, that's when it disperses. Because now that gives us the angles where the players can do things. And there's a few things that we know that players can do. So for one thing, I like the idea that if they're standing in the middle of the swarm and they're batting or swatting at the swarm and just spend an action fighting off the swarm, they can reduce the damage they take. Or they can protect themselves from the damage. They can try to protect themselves from being overwhelmed. You could even have a rule that says when a character is in the swarm, if they spend an action just warding off the swarm or beating off the swarm or fighting off the swarm, they don't take damage, but the first time they fail that attack, the swarm overwhelms them. And at that point now, there's no more beating it off. Okay, the players have to stop beating it off at that point. Once they fail to beat it off, they have to stop because now they're in the swarm. The swarm has overwhelmed them. Okay, but there are also things that they can do that would actually affect the swarm's cohesion. And you can think about these things in terms of, there's some basic actions that they would take. Brandishing any flaming object, like waving a torch around in a swarm, that's different from smacking it with a weapon, right? Because not only does that kill lots of little critters, but that also induces panic. So if you're waving a torch around inside, well, that's going to reduce the organization of the swarm, right? And and you can think about other things. Spells that do area damage, right? That's a big one. A fireball should be able to just end a swarm immediately, whereas spells that do single target damage are useless. Nothing that targets one creature is useful against a swarm. Okay, smashing vials of acid in the swarm, also useful. So you can start thinking about these things, but you can also leave it up to the players to come up with some of this. You should define some of this, and you should make it clear, communicate some of this stuff to the players. You can, once you're in the swarm, you can stand there and fight it off with a weapon, and but you can't really hurt the swarm that way. All you're doing at that point is protecting yourself, right? Or, and brandishing a torch might help, or, area spells or whatever. Fine, whatever, and you can run through the list and you already have a size and the other thing now is the size. Like if the players all run in different directions, then the swarm has to decide, does it chase everybody? In which case it has to be bigger, or does it focus on just a few people, or does it just chase one person, whatever it is. And that's why it might be good to have that whole size versus disperse organization stat, right? So then there's the idea, okay, so now you're sticky, the swarm is sticky, and so after you exit the swarm, you can take action. Like basically, again, this is not something where you need the players to define things too specifically. If they say anything like, I'm going to throw myself on the ground and roll around and crush the bugs, or I'm going to swat at the bugs or do anything like that, then, maybe set like, okay, you do that for a round, and there's this like lingering damage where, okay, now it's doing less damage until it's gone. Diving into water, that's a classic where if you're already covered in the swarm, then you throw yourself into water and then, the bugs on you die and then they can't get at you when you're in the water, that kind of a thing. All right. So somewhere in that pile of mechanics now is a way to build a swarm mechanically. Because now you can define the things that it has. It has damage, and it might have other stuff. It has the creatures it's composed of, and we need to know whether they fly, or whether they're grounded, or whether they're both, and whether they're sticky, whether they stay with you when you leave the swarm or not, right? We need size, we need organization, and we need a rule that says as the size goes up, the organization goes down, and as the size goes down, the organization goes up. And then player actions affect the organization stat directly. And then like on the swarm's turn, it adjusts the size accordingly, or whatever you can, because you can see how those two stats are in a tug of war. Or you can even say that when the players do something, it affects both the size and the organization of the swarm. Or you can decide something like an area effect will do both because it kills so many creatures. But like brandishing a torch doesn't really kill that many creatures. Or like something like smoke or a gust of wind spell, because this is where now the whatever stat shows its real power, right? What if the wizard says, I'm going to cast gust of wind at the locust swarm? Well, what will that do? That will greatly disperse the swarm. So, on a success, or, you might have to give the swarm something that passes as saving throws, depending on the system you're running, or just a basic like proficiency modifier and stat, and then you roll a saving throw for it or whatever. And if it fails, then, the swarm's organization is reduced by half. And then you reduce its size accordingly, or some shit like that, right? But the power of having those whatever stats, which are better than progress clocks because you can do so many things with them and have two in a tug of war like this, is that you can then adjudicate all the other clever ideas. So you just have to define the basic things that everybody will think of. Anyway, that's how I would build a swarm encounter. And I realize now that at this point, somebody has to tie this all together. And I wouldn't go more complicated than this. Like, it is tempting to say, okay, well, if you're wearing armor and the bugs are in your armor, then they're all stuck in your armor, yada, yada, yada. It is tempting to overcomplicate the shit out of this. Don't do that. You don't need it. Okay? Especially because, like, armor doesn't work that way with anything else. Right? We don't... Like, if the party was fording a river and got leeches, you wouldn't penalize them about you guys with the armor, well, I'm going to give you a bonus to save versus leeches because of your armor. But if you fail that save, then the leeches are in your armor and you need to take off your armor. Like, you wouldn't do that. It's just one of those things where armor is kind of a pain in the ass. You could, but I don't think you need to complicate it like that. All right. Nox is here. So I'm going to ask Nox, is that enough? Is that enough? Is there something in there you can work with? Okay. Now here's what I'm going to ask you to do as payment for my beneficence. No, for my largesse. In sitting here and just thinking through how could we do a swarm better than a monster. I note that you said you have been typing furiously. Before you come up with a system, while you are still sitting on the raw notes, I would love a copy of those raw notes. Because I think somewhere in there is a system that I could use and build, and I would like to build my own, no offense to you, but I like to build my own things. And I also think I could do something very similar with oozes, where an ooze is basically just a swarm with a cell membrane. Because technically that's it. Oh no, they don't have to be clean. They can be ugly as hell. I don't care. I can work with it because I just don't want to lose anything I said. By the way, that was me spitballing. I thought about, like, I went through the history of swarm mechanics and I looked at some interesting mechanics that had been done in the past. But as far as like the stats and stuff and how I would actually build it, I was spitballing from there. But I think honestly, organization, size, those are your two levers that the players can affect and that you can affect. And and the other thing I think is that damage should vary by organization, and you should also think about how damage varies based on the creature types and the player positioning. Like, because you think about fire ants, and this is what you want to do. Like, you do not want to fall prone in fire ants, right? Right? Like, that's the terrifying thing, is you do not want to fall prone in fire ants. So, if you end up prone in a swarm of creepers, you know, so there you go. That's it. That is how we write a swarm mechanic. Anyway, I'm sorry it's not polished. I'm sorry. I was only doing notes on this stuff today, so I'm sorry that I didn't actually like finish and polish the system. But seriously, the whatever stat is your best friend. All right. I think I've given enough content for tonight. How much time have I filled? All right, 2 hours. 2 hours. That's good enough. All right. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out. Thanks, Nox, for the question. That was a lot of fun. I love doing that. I love like working through a shop problem. That feels a lot of fun. And otherwise, once again, I'm going to echo what I said earlier. Everybody who has been continuing to support me, and especially who has upped their support or added their support newly in the last couple of months as I've been trying to put things back together, I am immensely grateful for the ongoing support. And it is helping me feel like that I can turn this around and that we can still do great things in this community. And that I can give you awesome content and keep giving you awesome content for as long as people are showing up for it. I want to keep doing stuff, but I do eventually want I want you all to be playing my game eventually so that we don't have to be like, well, D&D has screwed up swarms completely. By the way, like probably Club Slapdash will now have awesome swarms. Though, yeah, there was some of this already, because Slapdash has some whatever stats going on in it. It's too useful a mechanic, you know. But anyway, thank you to everybody. Thanks everybody who hung out tonight and listened, and thanks for the comments. Poll is coming out I'm probably going to end up publishing this recording on Wednesday, because despite my vision for June, the article for this week may not be published until toward the end of the week. The early access one, the general access one, is going to go live tomorrow, Tuesday. Go live tomorrow, Tuesday, because I'm recording this on Monday. Not that any of this matters, because, okay. Let's get down to closing this out. Thank you, everybody. That's all. Just thank you from the bottom of my heart to you, my awesome community, the greatest community on the internet. Great, awesome Discord, awesome discussions. It is always a joy to run events, and I can't believe how many people turn out in the evenings, and people kept drifting in as this went on. That's really gratifying. Got some really exciting stuff coming. June is going to be the big month. And that's it. That's it. Hasta lasagna. Don't get any on ya.